Welcome back to the Stay Broke podcast. Today's guest is Brandon McCraney, the mind behind Olde Raleigh Distillery. Brandon didn't wake up one day and decide to own his own distillery. This was a 15-year journey built on discipline, patience, and staying broke long before the success showed up. We're talking early life, military mindset, entrepreneurship, and what it really takes to build something meaningful from the ground up. Brandon, welcome to the Stay Broke podcast.
All right. Thank you for having me. Pleasure to be here.
So you were a fun one to research. You've done some stuff in your time here on Earth. Captain in the U.S. Air Force, bachelor's degree from NC State, master's degree from University of Cincinnati and Harvard University, certified executive bourbon steward and whiskey sommelier, 2023 best micro distillery in the United States at the International Whiskey Competition, and multiple whiskey awards, including top placements for their bourbon and special cask releases. It's impressive. So
Thank you.
I enjoyed this one. So we just like to start off with who are you? Where are you from?
Yeah. Sure. So Brandon McCraney, I live in Raleigh, North Carolina. That's the name Olde Raleigh. We're a family-owned and operated business. I'd say first and foremost, I'm a father and a dad and a husband, and an entrepreneur. But yeah, we are a family-owned business. I just did this the old-fashioned way, saved up 15 years to be able to chase my dream, which is blending whiskey from around the world. And luckily, I've got a very supportive family that has put up with my shenanigans so far.
I hear you. Where are you from originally?
So originally, I'd say I'm just outside of Fayetteville, North Carolina.
Okay.
But I was a military brat. I bounced around all over the U.S. My dad was in the Air Force.
Okay. Yeah. So did you have that mindset that as soon as you're old enough, you're going to be in the military too?
No, not exactly. Growing up, my parents said you're going to college. So that was never not an option. It wasn't even a thought. But it wasn't until I was at NC State in Raleigh. Around the second year in, I went in there thinking I was going to be a businessman. And I mean, quite frankly, I didn't know what all was out there. I mean, my father was aircraft mechanic in the military. That's all I knew is, his friends, and then my mom was a teacher. So I'd always told my parents I'm going to be a businessman, and I would be that kid at middle school turning a 4-pack of gum into, it cost me $2, turning it into $8, and I went, what if I did this 100 times? So going into college, I thought a successful career would be, if I worked at a bank or something and
right.
I made $50,000 a year, I thought that was a great thing. But about 2 years in, I still don't know to this day what came over me, but I thought, I really want to, if I want to be successful, I need to double down on learning those leadership skills. And just immediately thought, I guess, of the Air Force subliminally, because that's all I knew through my dad. And that also just happened to be shortly before 9/11 happened. So I enrolled into the ROTC program just before that. And then when 9/11 happened, I'd say that's about the most patriotic this country's been, at least in my lifetime, I felt.
Yeah,
and I was all in at that point. Yeah.
Okay. That's cool. I get that, like growing up, seeing your dad in the military, and that's the anti-entrepreneurial spirit. I feel like being in the military, as far as they don't like you thinking outside of the box. You follow along, do what you're told kind of mindset. And I found the military that way. Maybe it was different. I was enlisted. Maybe it was different as an officer.
Mm-hmm. Well, I would say yes and no. There's the military, U.S. military offers the best training in the world.
Right.
You get training. Some people get out because all they got was training. I felt like I've met some folks in the various services. But, I'd say there was a little bit of latitude to make judgments and try to push. I was an acquisitions officer, so we did weapons development. Weapon meaning, and could be an aircraft, could be a missile, satellite, things such as that.
Right.
But if you're a program manager, you've got the ability to make decisions, to drive, to hit the objective you're trying to accomplish. So I'd say, it's yes and no, I guess, from my experience.
Definitely the leadership portion of it, 100%. I learned so much about leadership through the military, but they like you to stay in your lane. At least as enlisted, I had to stay in my lane. Anytime I tried to do something a different way, I got put back in my place real quick.
Yeah, copy that. Yeah.
So I've talked about businessman. Like I was the same way growing up. I wanted to be a businessman, and I didn't even really know the word entrepreneur at that time. Like entrepreneur had like a negative connotation. That was like your uncle that didn't really work. He was an entrepreneur. Yeah. Did you have that kind of same experience?
Yeah, I never knew that word entrepreneur. Not till Shark Tank, like 20 years ago. Then it became like the buzzword, and that's like this cool thing to be an entrepreneur. But yeah, it never even registered in my head because it wasn't in my vocabulary growing up.
Yeah. So did you take a break from college, go to the military, and then back to college? What was your path there?
So I graduated from NC State in 2004, commissioned in the Air Force. I was stationed at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Dayton, Ohio. And that job is you're an acquisitions, essentially you're a program manager over a weapons system. And with that, you work hand in hand with a lot of defense contractors because, well, if you want your next aircraft, it's not just sitting at Walmart, right?
Right.
You have to develop, what it is that you want out of that aircraft, its capabilities, et cetera. And then you will send that out an RFP to have defense contractors sign up to say they want to do that work. So a lot of business interaction. And so while I was up there, it just made sense to get my MBA, and that was at University of Cincinnati, just south of Dayton. And that's where I got my first master's.
Okay.
While I was in. Yeah.
How long did you serve for?
4 years.
4 years.
Yeah, I knew going in, I said, all right, at the 4-year mark, I'll say, let's make this a career, or maybe it's time to go down a different path. And I had that itch probably around the second year in. I said, I want to do something business related, but I didn't know what that was yet. Me growing up, I was always jealous of that 12-year-old that knew they wanted to be a dentist. Remember that? And then they got the grades, they went right into school and they were a dentist, and everything just flowed. For me, that was not the case. I had these itches and interests. I just wasn't able to piece all of that together until probably my mid-30s.
Yeah.
So when I got out, I said, okay, what's the one part of the country I haven't lived in? That was Boston. I took a job with a Fortune 40 company, and it was a sales role doing infrastructure type projects, energy related projects. And with that, that's where I started to really gain skill sets that have positioned me well to start this business.
What do you think was the best part about the military for preparing you? Was it the training or the interactions that you had with the business side of it?
I think it was the observing very successful leaders in very elevated positions for me. While I was fortunate enough to be on a 3-star general's commander's action group. And so I got to see this gentleman make decisions, billion-dollar type decisions on an hourly basis, and also learning how he conducted himself. It wasn't a 9-to-5. When you're in that role, he was doing things on the evenings, on the weekends, always carrying himself and making sure he was setting a good example. And that's really resonated with me. And then after that, I was an executive officer for a colonel who went on to be a 3-star general. Different style leader. He let me sit in on his meetings and just get an understanding of how he made key decisions. Because, for example, you'd have 7 straight hours worth of meetings, different programs, having, millions of dollars, at stake about going one direction or another. And I remember I got out of one of those meetings, and I'm first lieutenant, right? You're still learning, right? You're in just learning mode. And I said, sir, how do you jump in here and know you're making the right decision when you only had 30, 45 minutes to look at this stuff? And you're looking at 100 other things throughout the day. And he said, Brandon, if I'm going to grow, and I got to the people below me, I got to empower them to make decisions. And so for me, I kind of gauge things on making decisions as I've got field goal posts of anything within these field goal posts are acceptable. If they're outside of here, I've got to weigh in. But if it falls within here, I'm okay with it.
Right.
That has always resonated with me, in particular here. If I'm going to grow this business, nobody's going to do it the same way I do it, because I think about this thing 24/7.
Yep.
But I need to start delegating things to people and empowering them to make decisions and say, look, this is the outcome I'm looking for. You go figure this out and come back with a game plan. And as long as they fall within those field goal posts, I'm fine with it. And that has been a recipe for me that's been very helpful.
That's a great way to articulate it. I try and explain that to people too, but that's a great example. I might have to use that one again. I had that same experience. Like I did 6 years with my initial enlistment. It came up to that time to make the decision of, do I stay in? Because if I stay in, I'm in for 20. If I sign another paper, I have to stay for 20. Like that was my mindset. It sounds like yours was too. And for me, it was the same as like in school. I didn't feel like I felt in school. I didn't feel like I felt or fit in the military. I loved my time there. Like all the experiences, the things I learned from it were amazing, but I knew that like another 15 years of that just wasn't for me, that I had to figure something else out. But what it did expose me to was a whole new world outside of my tiny little town that I grew up in. And that's really what I took away from it.
That's great.
Yeah. But did you feel like after you left there, went into the corporate world, that it was more of the same? Like, or did you feel like it was a different experience?
Different experience. One thing, once you leave the military, you realize is the camaraderie you get in the service can't be replicated.
Yep.
That's for sure. That's the one thing I probably missed the most. But at that point, I'm in my mid-20s. When you're 20s, I feel like you're just trying to prove yourself all the time. And so when I went in the corporate world, it was all about climbing that corporate ladder. Right? How quick can I get promoted? What skill sets do I need? What training outside of work can I invest in myself to help me get up that ladder quicker? And but it was always, I did have that military mindset that was ingrained in me growing up, was we were moving every 2 to 3 years. And so moving up to Boston, we knew 3 years and we will get out of here. I committed that to my wife, and we did. I think in that third to fourth year, we made our way back down to Raleigh. But I view, it was just, it was do your best, try to get promoted, get more responsibility, gain more skill sets. That's kind of how I view the corporate world.
When did you decide to go back to college?
So the Harvard degree.
Right.
So when I was up there, up in Boston, I would close large infrastructure projects, meaning like HVAC systems, controls, solar was becoming a big thing up there. And I took note of that green energy movement. Mm-hmm. And it was becoming a hot topic of conversation. And as I was having these meetings with these executives and talking about bigger picture things, I discovered this program in Harvard that kind of just, it complemented what I was trying to do. And so that's what I spent my evenings doing for almost 3 years.
Okay.
Yeah. And then I wrapped up that degree when I moved down to Raleigh. Don't ever recommend doing this, but we finally sold our house. We moved down to Raleigh. My wife was 38 weeks pregnant. She drove herself down because I had the U-Haul. And we had our daughter shortly after. But because I wasn't done with our research, I would literally work at home on Monday, fly up to Boston, do the research with the department chair, and then I'd catch the 5:30 flight to wherever I had to work in the Southeast. And I did that for the last 2 months of that degree. Yeah.
Huh. That must have been tough.
Yeah, and I was living with my parents because the house is still being built. So yeah, it was a little stressful. I don't recommend anybody doing that.
You had a plan to move. You were going to move no matter what.
Yeah, well, the South, Boston's fun. The weather, though, can be tough in the traffic.
Yeah.
So my role up there, I was gone Monday through Friday, living in airports and hotels, trying to close deals. My wife had a job 3 hours a day in traffic, and now you got a newborn to go with that. And our quality of life, we had to make a change. Yeah.
I hear you. Why Raleigh? Or why the Raleigh area?
Raleigh's always felt like home. I love this place, this area. I like the people, love the food. When I came to NC State, it just felt like a place I wanted to be long term. And I started dating my wife the last year that I was here, so she got a chance to come down here and enjoy it. And luckily, like me, she's not a fan of cold weather, so it was an easy sell. We knew one day we'd get back down here, and what brought me down here was I took a job with my previous company I was before I took the leap to do this, to help them start a division, and they wanted me to run the Southeast for sales, and they said, live wherever you want, just be near a major airport, RDU's right there, and here we are.
Well, that's cool. When did the whole idea of the distillery, or when did you start getting interested in whiskeys and bourbons? And
I began my fascination with whiskey probably in my mid-20s, but not to this degree by any means. It was just something that was growing on the side. And I always tell folks, like, sometimes you have a passion that you just think's cool. You never think it'd be something you could do full time. And that's what happened here. I was just that guy, 15 years ago that had a ridiculous bourbon collection back before it was cool.
Right.
And so we'd host parties, and I look back on it now, and I was like, I could talk about a bottle and just talk about it for 15, 20 minutes. Would you believe this and that? And next thing I know, I got a room full of people wanting to hear the story about this bourbon they don't know nothing about. But while that was kind of growing on the side, and I would go to seminars and workshops and stuff like that, got certifications and stuff. That corporate ladder, continued climbing up that. And I finally got that interim VP title I thought I always wanted. It's like, yes. And probably a month into it, I realized I was just chasing a title.
Yeah.
And I'm on these calls and strategy calls, and I'm like, I don't know if I agree with that. And but also just it wasn't fulfilling. I was chasing this thing, and the greatest thing ever happened to me. Well, not the greatest thing ever happened. Sure. One of the great things that happened in my professional career was a failure. 3 months into that interim role, I was told I didn't get the job. They did an outside hire, and guy was a perfect fit. 15 years, I think, my senior, specific to that industry, and he loved the industry. What I learned in the process is that I didn't really care too much about the industry. I was brought in to help start a division and grow it, and I was given a lot of autonomy to create deals and close them and things like that. And that's what I loved, was to be able to do that.
Yeah.
And so this was December 2016, found out I didn't get the role, sitting down watching a holiday movie with my wife over a bottle of wine. And I just looked at her and I said, honey, I think I might want to start a whiskey company. And we were making really good money at the time, 3 kids. And I was expecting her to say, you need to shut the you-know-what up and have your midlife crisis in about 15, 20 years. But she didn't say that. She said, she paused for a moment. She said, I actually think you'd be really good at that for X, Y, and Z reasons. And when she said that, I kind of freaked out a little bit. I went, oh, I wasn't expecting that. And I did what we did back in 2016. I literally Googled, if I'm going to start a whiskey company, how do I do it? And true story, popped up first thing on the Google search, this place called Moonshine University in Louisville, Kentucky. And they offer these courses one was a distiller's course, which, you learn how to distill, but more importantly, you learn about the regulations and the red tape around what's all involved with starting a distillery or whiskey operation. Because outside of pharmaceutical industry, this is the most highly regulated industry in the country. And so they had a class that was 3 weeks to the day that I was looking, and they had 1 seat available. And I went,
meant to be.
Gotta be kidding me. So I booked the class, met my new boss, first week of January, said, I'm sure you're kind of upset about this thing. I won't be here forever. Let's talk about a succession plan. And I said, do you mind if I take a week off in 3 weeks just to clear my head? And he said, do whatever you need to do. And so went to Louisville, and the class started on a Sunday. By Tuesday, I knew this is what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
And that was third, fourth week of January 2017. I was naive enough to think I'd start a whiskey brand in like 60 days. That was the most ridiculous statement ever. It wasn't until 4 years, to the week actually, that we opened. We opened during COVID. And it took me another 2.5 years to have the guts to take the corporate leap to do this full time.
Okay.
Yeah. So it wasn't something that happened overnight.
Right.
I definitely earned it getting this thing open. I had 1,000 opportunities to not do it and go back to the corporate life. But by 2019, I was all in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It sounds like you're talking about, you're like, oh, I want to do this thing and I'll just start heading in that direction until something stops me and then I'll rethink it. But it seems like everything just kind of fell into place along the way. Your wife was on board. You had the open seat. Everything was kind of...
Not exactly.
No?
No, I had quite a few twists and turns along the way. These stills here I bought in 2018 when I was still working. I was looking for a location. So I met with the city of Raleigh to give them my vision, which I wanted to bring in whiskey from all over the world and just make these one-off creations as a blender. And the inspection planning department, they said, okay, well, you want to bring in a lot of highly flammable liquid and bring it into one building, you need to be in an industrial park. Mm-hmm. So I spent 2 years from 2017 to 2019 trying to find a location around Raleigh. 2 issues with that. One, industrial parks, just cold, sterile, no foot traffic, didn't fit what I was looking for, like a destination location. 2, it's one of the hottest real estate markets in the country from a commercial perspective. And I didn't want to be backed by private equity or investors because I didn't want them telling me in 3 years, need to be in 20 states, and because of that, I'm going to have to water down a product. I wanted to get entrenched with blending whiskey. So I was very limited in terms of options that were there. Started looking around the suburbs and trying to find the right location after the 2 years in Raleigh just wasn't working out, and that's when I found this place. That was March of 2019. So we're right now sitting in Zebulon, North Carolina. So it's one of the suburbs outside of Raleigh. But this downtown, when I found this building, 50% of these buildings downtown were vacant. During COVID, when we opened, the other 50% that weren't vacant, 100% of them went out of business during COVID. So we're the only thing in town. But bought the building in September 2019. Originally, we were supposed to open, oh, by the way, resigned from my corporate career 3 days before buying the building. My wife gave me that blessing, excuse me.
You're good.
What she didn't know in that, what she did not know in that process, I bought a building, I had stills, I had no money for the business. At that point, I was ready to take the leap.
Yeah.
That created some problems, though. We had no money to do the demo or pay anybody, so I had to do all of it myself. And then I started applying for small business loans. That demo was also a good stress relief, but again, my wife had no idea what I'd done. So applying for small business loans, never done that before. It's not fun. Got rejected 12 times. The 13th said yes, though, and that was the week after Christmas 2019 that made this a reality. Took my wife out to lunch and told her what I did. She cussed me out pretty good that day. But I said, honey, look, I've got this construction loan for a design the county approved, and based off this construction schedule, we're going to be open April 2020, which historically was the worst month in the last 100 years. That's when COVID started. Yep. So we didn't open until January the following year. But it wasn't really COVID that impacted us. Our construction process was a nightmare. So once we started construction, the design that was approved by the inspectors, once we started construction, started making us change everything that they had approved.
Of course.
And so when that happened, we ate through all our construction money, all of our contingency money, all the money to connect our production equipment, and then I had to wipe out my entire 401k to make sure we got open third week of January 2021 during COVID. Excuse me. And we still haven't recovered from that, what they've done to us. So I'm a glass half full kind of guy. Why not take a little sip of that? But yeah, a lot of twists along the way. And then opening during COVID was just crazy. I don't, for anybody in retail or the bar and restaurant industry, if you made it that far, you're limping along. And when I bring on an employee, that's a heavy burden for me. I mean, I take that seriously.
Yeah.
So I was very timid to hire anybody because, one, I didn't know if anybody was going to show up here at all, one. Two, I post that we got a job opening and somebody leaves retail to come here, and now will they be gainfully employed or not? I don't know. It was scary times, but luckily it worked out.
Yeah.
And wound up hiring the first week after we had a great turnout, and been humming along ever since. 5 years now.
It's awesome. Couple things, I guess. How important is it to have the right partner for you to be successful? In your wife specifically.
Oh, I couldn't do it without her.
Yeah.
Yeah, she runs the house, I run the business. That's kind of what we say. And anybody that has multiple kids out there, I mean, we've got 2 girls, 1 boy, and they have their extracurricular activities. And 4 days a week, I'm like, you might as well just be an Uber driver. Like, I can't even keep up with the schedule. If it was just me, I couldn't do it.
Yeah. It's funny. I don't think everybody's capable of being an entrepreneur. There's a mindset, there's a drive, there's a unexplainable passion to it, I feel like. And from the outside looking in, it's like, why would anybody in their right mind give up probably a 6-figure salary and just throw it all to the side, dive in on a dream, even when things aren't working out, cash in the 401k, do all this stuff? Like, that's not normal, right?
Yeah, I've been called crazy once or twice. And being in this industry, hell, you got to be a little crazy. But it's like sharks with blood in the water. Once you get that taste in your mouth,
yeah,
I couldn't go back. But it's hard. It's really hard, and it's not for most people.
Yeah.
If you're that person that needs, if you're that person that needs attaboys all the time and somebody patting you on the back and telling you everything you're doing is good, and you need that affirmation, this isn't for you.
Yeah.
When you found the thing. When somebody can tell you no 1,000 times, you get hit with 3,000 curveballs, and all you know how to do is just continue marching forward. Yep. If you get to that point, then maybe you're ready to do this. But if not, if you need your dad calling you and your parents calling you to tell you you're doing a great job, good luck. My parents thought I was crazy. We grew up with no alcohol in my family. Yeah, my mom thought I was nuts, absolutely nuts. Yeah. I will say this, though. My favorite conversations now are with other entrepreneurs.
Yeah, 100%.
Because if you're in the trenches, I like nothing more than going out with coffee or having lunch with somebody and just hearing their war stories.
Yeah.
Because we're all constantly trying to solve problems. And if you're meeting with another entrepreneur, sometimes they're going to give you a different perspective and maybe give you a new solution that you didn't think of. Now, I love nothing more than that, man. I meet with a group once a month, mastermind group, all business owners. We all got the same struggles, and just to be able to get in a room and just vent it out a little bit, it's like therapy. But also, you come out of there and I'm refreshed and recharged, and got 20 different ideas I want to work on. So.
Yeah. Well, nobody else understands. You can have a supportive wife. My wife's super supportive. She doesn't have that entrepreneurial mindset at all. So I can't vent to her. Like, I can vent, but I'm not going to take problems to her. And it sounds like you did kind of the same thing. I'm going to take a solution to her at the same time and let her know about the problems I'm having and how I'm going to move forward through it. But I don't want her taking on that stress of the 9 million things I'm dealing with on a daily basis. And there's nobody else I can pick up and call and be like, this is what I'm going through. And they're going to be like, aw,
Yeah, I can relate to that very well. It's, my wife knows the days I'm dealing with a lot.
Yeah.
You just can't hide it sometimes. you got that, your shoulders kind of drop down a little bit. But yeah, you got to learn how to be able to handle stress, but also leave it at the door, bring it home. You know, your kids still want the best of you. They don't care about all your problems. They want to show you, check out my new skin on Fortnite or whatever the thing is, right? But yeah, I think my wife understands that too. There's going to be certain things I'm not going to share, not because I don't want her to hear it, but because we interpret stress a lot different. I live in a world of stress. Every week is something different. You know, last week was quite the roller coaster for me here with the ice storm, snow and everything. So you just got to figure out how to cope and come up with healthy, strategies to push yourself along the way. Like me, meditation, working out. You know, those are my key that I go to.
Yeah.
Breathing exercises if it's getting really bad. I'll do that too. Yeah.
I bought a old country store / bottle shop right at the beginning of COVID, because it was a good opportunity. Nobody wanted to run it. It was COVID. So I dove into that head first, and my wife thought I was crazy for that one. But I can't, like, the struggles with that during COVID, I can't imagine what you went through trying to open this up, between not being able to get anybody from the ABC Commission on the phone and dealing with inspectors that didn't want to come out, all kinds of headaches that I had. How'd COVID complicated, I guess?
COVID definitely complicated things. I mean, from a construction standpoint, I always had some lead time issues with things. Opening during COVID was a bear. But also, that's the only life I knew. Like, people said, oh, it was so better before COVID. When you open during COVID, that's all you know.
Yeah.
And it was definitely challenging. I mean, the mask was one thing, right? You had folks that were just mad at the world because anything was open, because they thought everybody should be sitting at home 24/7. We'd have customers come here, and they would post a picture sitting down with their friend look, check out this new place. And somebody would post that. Then you'd see somebody sees that picture on Facebook, and they're like, look at these people not drinking, consuming their drink with their mask on. And so you had to deal with that. Having the tape everywhere, the 6 feet tape. And then also, if you're in the service industry, like, we've got a 30-foot bar here. So we've got several people, let's say they're 10 feet away. If they can't see the bartender's face and they're not making direct eye contact with some large hand gesture, well, then you run the risk of somebody getting upset because they're not being recognized. Although even if our bartender said, I'll be right with you, they didn't see their lips moving, right?
Yeah.
So just little things like that were a challenge. And then we opened during COVID. We essentially just had our tasting room operating, but we weren't selling bottles yet, because the government haven't approved our labels yet. So we didn't sell our first product until April of that year. So 3 months later. And that, though, we didn't know how that turnout was going to be. Like, okay, we're selling this first batch. We've been sending it out to all the social media. Is anybody going to show up? If they do show up, if there's a line, how do we deal with the line? And a lot of question marks. And we did that first product release. It was a crazy day. We had people waiting 2 hours to get that first bottle. Probably one of the best days that we ever had. And we were severely understaffed. We weren't ready for that. But we wrapped up that day. And actually, that was a great day for me. At the end of that day, kind of got my redemption with my mother. She said, all right. She goes, clearly you kind of knew what you were doing here. I'm behind you on this thing. And she showed up that day to help out. But that was a little bit of a redemption day for me, for sure.
Yeah.
But COVID was interesting. Yeah.
Did you have kind of the mindset that if we can survive this, then we're going to be able to survive just about anything?
I'd like to say yes, but there's so many different curveballs thrown at you. I mean, it's like every week. I kind of just view every week we have as this week's going to be a new puzzle.
Yeah.
I know I got it within me to solve it. Just let's see what the day brings, and what are those pieces I have to be able to make this picture. Because if it's not COVID, it's tariffs. For us with bourbon, during COVID, you couldn't make whiskey quick enough, right? Everybody was trapped at home, drinking away their sorrows, celebrating their victories, and so whiskey was up like 30%. When we opened during COVID, if you recall, bourbon in particular was up like double-digit percentages because folks are trapped at home, drinking away their sorrows, celebrating their victories, and you just couldn't make it quick enough. And so with that, a lot of people jumped into this industry to take advantage of that. And so I've got colleagues spent tens of millions of dollars in facilities to do large-scale production of making whiskey. But the challenge with that is you make today what the world needs for bourbon in particular 4 or 5 years from there.
Right.
So here we are, fast forward 4 or 5 years from now, and the market's really changed. So with that, that's also, we've pivoted in the process for a couple of different reasons, but we've got access to whiskey that I could only have dreamed of in 2019.
Right.
And the cost of those barrels, because the market's flooded, is really advantageous for me to double down and be able to secure that product. But 3, 4, 5 years ago, I mean, you were lucky. I was clawing to just try to find 2 or 3 barrels from somebody. And because I'm not a big, highly funded operation here, meaning investors or a bunch of rich folks come together to create a brand, which 9 times out of 10, that's how these brands are started, the ones you see on shelves. I was knocking on doors and doing sales calls, just trying to get people to buy into me and what I was trying to do to get 4 or 5 barrels of bourbon, if I could find them. And after I tried them and made sure they were the quality I was looking for. But it was a dogfight back then. So yeah, I've had quite a few challenges along the way. Very open about my story. We're a blending operation here. So these stills you see behind you, the intent was originally to cut these on and train a production team to operate the stills and make the bourbon. And in a couple of years, the stuff would be old enough to blend our own. But when we almost went bankrupt during COVID, forced me to pivot and start exponentially networking and meeting people and securing unique barrels of whiskey. And we started releasing products and they started getting some notoriety and we got these big, great awards. And I kept networking and getting access to more and more different sources of whiskey. And so while that's going on, we're still trying to get the stills cut on and we got the chill water piping done and I applied for a bank loan to complete the project, and the day before the loan was to close, loan officer declined the loan, no explanation. That set us back, and then I started networking, getting more and more contacts to get unique whiskey, and I had like this aha moment about a year ago. I was meeting with that mastermind group I was telling you about, and I said, "Yo, I've got a problem here." And they said, "Well, what?" And I said, "Well, we're Olde Raleigh Distillery, but we're still not fundamentally doing what the name says. And it's not out of design. We've had thrown all these curveballs, and now the craziest things happen. I've got 11 different sources for making bourbon. We got the most diverse bourbon on the planet with different recipes and things like that. And I'm loving what I'm doing, but we got to cut these stills on." And they went, "Well, what's it going to cost to cut it on?" And I said, about $150,000 to complete the steam piping. And then they said, "Well, great. Well, then you can start selling your whiskey." And I went, "Oh, no. We got to wait another 4 years." And the numbers guy was going, "Well, how many days a week were you going to operate it? And how much is it going to cost a day? Blah, blah, blah." And at the end of that, he said, "Well, Brandon, that's going to be $2.1 million before you get $1 return on your money." And I went, "Sounds about right." And then then they said, "Well, but you're doing what you love now?" And I went, "I'm loving it. I'm blending. I'm getting to create, just making all these great products." And I never will forget this. I've never been in a meeting where I felt like I was in a firing squad amongst people.
Right.
The one female in the group says, I'll G-rate this. She says, "You need to get out of your own blinking head and focus on doing what you love, because this is a stupid conversation.
Yeah.
So I bought these things in 2018. We've been curveball after curveball thrown to us. And I can tell you right now, today, I don't know if I'm ever going to cut them on.
Yeah.
Where I'm at right now in my life is, if my kids decide maybe they want to take this on, this could be their baby. But what I do, blending is more of an art form.
Okay.
Distillation, science, you can teach someone how to distill in a book. You can't teach somebody how to blend in a book. You got to get years and years of palate development, understanding how to package barrels of whiskey together, to layer them to create complexity. And so that's what I do. I think that's my gift, and that's the craft that I've laser focused in on. And we're blending, I mean, this year we're going to release 180 different one-off whiskeys.
Wow.
It's more than anybody I'm aware of in the world. And we can do that because I own all of this. If I want to do something crazy, I will, which this project we're doing called the 1,000 Blends Project is absolutely nuts. It makes not much financial sense, but it's about creation and exploration and being able to share that with our patrons when they come in.
That's awesome. I've been in those meetings where I think I have the best idea on how I'm going to get there, and they start firing away and they find the holes real quick, kind of make you rethink things. Did you ever have a point with all the curveballs thrown at you, or like, did it ever get to a point where you got in your head and you're like, man, am I doing the right thing? Do I need to go back to the corporate world? Or were you just laser focused?
Laser focus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How do you cope with that kind of stuff? Because everybody gets intrusive thoughts and you can't let them win. And like, how'd you believe in yourself that much that you weren't going to let anything deter you?
I take a little comfort in knowing that I asked for this, but also I know that I got comfort in knowing it's within me to find out what the answer is to get us moving forward. Right. So January, for example, we lost half the month due to snow here. Huge financial impact.
Right.
And so I spent the last week figuring out, okay, how are we going to make up for that revenue? You know, what events are we going to have to, make the staff whole? Because they also, dealt with some issues with that as well. And so I like the problems, man. It's I find comfort knowing I'm going to find a way, because I've always found a way.
Yeah.
And that's just how I view it. And then you just got to complement that with doing healthy things, make sure you don't drive yourself in an early grave, right?
Right.
Working out and meditating and praying on it and things like that.
I feel like I've done different projects, most of them where I didn't have any money or any backing, and it was all, white knuckling the whole thing myself. And I've had other ones where I did have the money, and I found that the ones that I did on my own and had to really think about every step along the way would eventually steer me into a direction that I landed on something great. Is that kind of what happened here? Like, you started off wanting to do distilling and you ended up finding something that you're really passionate about.
Well, I was always passionate about it.
Right.
I think where I had to do it all over again, I thought I needed to distill it myself to, I guess, feel legitimate or something.
Right.
And that's something I would change if doing it all over again. Because it was staring me in my face what I love to do. And if you know anything about our brand, we don't replicate any batch that we make. Why? Because I don't like doing the same thing over and over and over again. That's all that is.
Right.
And so it was staring me in the face. I just, you got to learn, live and learn. And, sure, there's things you might want to do all over again. But who's to say that, part of this is the process, right? The struggle.
Yeah.
That's, the struggle is kind of the fun part sometimes too. You look back today and realize what I thought was stress 2 years ago is a Monday morning between 8 and 8:30. That is your ability to be able to absorb things and it not bug you down. But I think you need that too. If you're going to grow a larger company, you need to be able to take on larger problems. But to get those larger problems, first you got to figure out how to deal with those smaller problems, then medium-sized problems, and then if you're getting to large problems, you got to learn how to delegate. All right, now you deal with those medium-sized problems because I got to deal with these large problems. But it's a process. I don't think you cheat yourself. I think if you skip some of those hurdles, that in my opinion, anyways.
How'd you market the brand whenever you first started? You said you opened during COVID, used Facebook. Were you doing like paid ads? Did you have putting ads out everywhere? Was it just organically social media?
Organic social, no paid ads. We didn't have any money for paid ads. When we opened, it was, what's your 5-year plan? It was try to figure out how to pay the natural gas bill for February. That's where we were. So it was just posting on Facebook, I'm pretty active in the bourbon community, so there's a lot of Facebook bourbon groups. And I got a little bit of a name for myself during that time. I would teach. I did some Zoom classes about whiskey, and that's kind of how I got my name out there.
Okay.
And so that helped. But the bourbon community, those Facebook groups really supported us when we first opened because they all kind of connect with each other, and that was a big plus for us when we opened. But yeah, Facebook, Instagram. My wife does social media, so like TikTok. I'm never on there though. Social media is a lot.
Yeah, it is
a lot, but a necessity too. So
yeah. What's your strategy today? Is it the same as it was 5 years ago for marketing?
A little bit of, social media is a must. You got to do that all the time. I think where we like to feature the entire team here, so you get more connection points.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll feature all of our employees just to make it more personable. And we've got a newsletter that's grown to several thousand people. That's as valuable as anything, because these Instagram, Facebook, they constantly changing their algorithms, right? Whereas a newsletter, you own that person's address. Once a week, we have an opportunity to engage them with a new product release or an event coming out over the weekend. So we've really paid attention to trying to scale that. And we do some paid ads. SEO has really helped with Google. I think might be the top rated brand in the state. We've got over 500 5-star reviews. So when folks think of, I think, whiskey and a distillery around here, we're the first thing to pop up. And that's a big, actually, thank you to our staff.
Yeah.
They've blown that thing up. They've helped us get there.
Can't do anything by yourself.
That's right. Yeah, learn that for sure.
I like the approach featuring different members of your staff too, because a lot of people don't get that. They want to be the face all the time, but you want them to be comfortable with the people that are going to be there when they show up, not just looking for you.
Yeah, and I've gotten better with that. So when I first came in, I was so concerned with COVID and not wanting to upset people, and this is your baby, and giving your baby to somebody else on social. Concerns about that. But that's part of me growing a little bit too, and said, we've got a great team here. Let's showcase them. They brought into our vision. They want to be part of this ride. Let's get on this thing together and showcase everybody.
Yeah, well, I think that's a natural progression because you are the brand, at least in the beginning, so you have to be the face of the product, build the trust with the community on social media specifically, and then start introducing other team members along the way. I think that's the right way to do it for sure. What it take to become a sommelier? Can you explain that a little bit? A whiskey sommelier?
Yeah, so that's it's a school down in Texas, the Whiskey Marketing School, and it's a multi-day. They've got different levels, and I'm on their faculty now. And so it's a combination of textbook work with a test, and then just sampling a lot of different whiskeys depending on what type of whiskey you're doing for that particular level. And there's a test to go along with it, and if you pass that, then you're able to be certified. And I did the same thing up in Louisville with the Executive Bourbon Steward program. I'd say sommelier program is probably more. I went down there because I knew that if you're going to be a blender, you got to develop a good palate. And you'd be surprised the people that jump into this industry that they like the thought of starting a brand, but they don't know how to blend barrels. I mean, it's actually pretty common. But I said, well, I'm going to lead this company and I'm the guy doing the craft. That's when I set out many years ago to develop the palate, but I didn't want to just grab a bottle from the store and you just start drinking and be like, oh, here's my notes. I wanted to take a structured, methodical approach to developing it, and that's when I went down to Texas for that.
So you keep saying develop a palate. So it's something that anybody can learn how to do, or is it a specific, you have to already have a good ability to taste? I don't know. Yeah. Can you explain that a little bit?
Yeah, well, just being mindful, right? It's one thing to grab a handle of, you name a brand, and you go home and you watch TV and you're just drinking just to drink and get intoxicated. It's another thing to, all right, I'm going to have a quarter of an ounce to this thing, and I'm going to, be mindful about what exactly am I tasting? Why am I tasting this? When I first started into this journey, I couldn't describe anything about whiskey. I just, it was like colors. Like, why am I seeing red right now? What is going on? And then over time that developed to, all right, in bourbon, if there's rye in the mash bill, my palate might pick up like hot cinnamon candy notes. Well, that's red. That's, my brain was trying to figure out Rolodex of, memories where I crisscrossed with that thing before. But it took putting in the reps and being mindful about how I'm approaching the whiskey, writing down notes, things such as that, as opposed to just grabbing a glass, hanging out with your friends, and you're just chugging away at stuff.
Right. What's are there big differences and similarities between the depths of flavor with like wine compared to whiskeys?
Yeah, there are. Actually, I got a wine sommelier certification too, but is the baby certification. It's called I don't forget the technical term, but I got that right when I resigned from my corporate career. But I did it for the purpose of, we do cask finished bourbon here. So I'll import casks of, let's say, Bordeaux wine or Tawny Port, which is a fortified wine from estates in Europe. I'll bring them here. And so I wanted to understand the flavor profiles of what those wines were. Wine's a bit, easier is not the right word, but the wine sommelier program has a deductive tasting methodology. The beauty about it, if you get good at it, you can know not only the type of wine, the region it came from. If you're really good at it, you know the exact vintage of the year that it came out in that estate. And that process works. You don't have that with whiskey, and you don't because, well, you can source grain from anywhere. There's many different variables. The wood from wood's predominantly Missouri white oak, but it's a little bit different. But yeah, the tasting methodology, I say, is a little bit different, sure.
So you said that you mix here. Is that the right word? Mix or
blend?
Blend.
Yep.
You blend. So you're essentially buying a base from somewhere else, and then you're adding your flavors to it, or like, can you explain that?
Yeah. So what I'll do is, I've got relationships around North America, and so I kind of view in our back barrel area where we age our barrels. If you go to a big Kentucky distillery, they've got what's called rick houses, just big warehouses full of barrels. Ours, I refer to that as our pantry. So I'm back there kind of like a chef, and I'm hand selecting maybe a full barrel, maybe only a partial barrel, and packaging it with other barrels of, let's say, bourbon that I source from around the country. So before I bought those barrels and brought them here, they send me samples so I can taste the quality of it, the mouthfeel of it. And then from there, I'm saying, okay, I like what's going on with this. And if I already have a portfolio of bourbon in the pantry, right, I kind of view building a batch as like building a bouquet of flowers. So I already got this bouquet of flowers, all these beautiful, some provide more of a body of the bouquet, some provide some accents. So if I'm going to bring in a new bourbon from another part of the country, I'll get that sample of that barrel, and I'll say, okay, does this complement or accentuate it? Does it add more weight to it? Is it like throwing a black rose into this thing and just destroys it, right? And I say, okay, that's where I like my qualifier if I'm going to bring it to the distillery. But regardless of if something has, let's say, a little more spice forward, fruit forward, or whatever it may be, tasting is a subjective experience when you and I come to the table. And it's a subjective experience for a couple reasons. One, you and I both have blind spots in our tasting buds. 100% of the population does. Two, you and I grew up eating different cuisines, right? So we like things more than others. And third, we have different life experiences. And so when we come to the table, we've got all this baggage. And so when we try a whiskey, there's going to be something that hits for you that you love. And that for that same reason you love it, I might hate it because I've got some bad memory. Because all we're doing is when we're trying a whiskey and we're trying to describe it or decide if we like it or not, we're just crisscrossing with our Rolodex of memories. And was it good or bad? That's it.
Right.
Yeah. So, yeah. So I forget what the question was on there. I went off on a tangent.
It was just about you're fine. It was just about the difference between the depths in wine and whiskey.
Yeah. Well, I was saying tasting is objective, but one thing we can agree on if we're trying a whiskey, and what I define a good whiskey as, one that gives me a nice mouthfeel, nice oily, coats the tongue, regardless of if it's bourbon, rye whiskey, Scotch, Japanese whiskey, whatever. You and I can say we can disagree on, let's say it's too spicy or too smoky, but does it have a nice oily viscosity to it that coats the tongue nice? That is my first qualifier for selecting any whiskey that we either harvest in our pantry or selecting from around North America. Is it's got to have that nice mouthfeel. That's our building block here at Olde Raleigh for making whiskey.
So where you're buying these whiskeys from, I guess they're making it and then aging it in different ways.
Yeah.
And then are they bottling that and selling it like that, or they're only selling it to blenders?
Could be both. So you have in the industry, we have what's called contract distillers. And what they do, their sole role is to make barrels of whiskey, barrels of bourbon, let's say, for customers around the country. You also have distilleries that do some contract work, but also they have their own brands that they'll use that bourbon, wrap their marketing story around it, and they'll sell it. So it works in those kind of two buckets right there.
Okay. And then how do you find these distillers? Was it through your networking? Do you travel around, go to them? Do they have salespeople come to you? Like, how's that process?
Well, now it's all the above.
Okay.
First, it was me just knocking on doors and emails and calling people and just begging them to let me get 4 or 6 barrels. Come on, man. Let's send me a sample. I want to do this thing. I'm a growing brand. Give me a chance. And now, over time, we've developed a good reputation, and I've just got like a network of people. You meet one guy on an email, will hand you off to another guy. Now you got 2 people in your network. You go to a trade show or an industry show, and you meet 5 or 6 new people, and you just, as long as you keep good relationships and good reputation, it's been a couple of years now, so we're in a good position.
I guess the distillers, they're building a brand and a reputation too, right? So I guess whoever they hand or sell their whiskey to, they want to make sure that they're going to do it justice, I'm sure.
Yeah, what is most common is you'll sign a non-disclosure agreement.
Okay.
Where you can't tell where you got the whiskey from.
Interesting.
But a big reason you might do that is because if that particular company, that bourbon, they've got a vision for what they want to do with it. Just say it's bourbon. They got a vision for what they want to do with it. Maybe they want to age it another year. Maybe they want to put a cask finish on it. But they're also wrapping a lot of marketing dollars around that. And so they'll put a non-disclosure in place because if I get the barrels, and at that point after that, I can do whatever I want to do with it.
Right.
So if I decide to make some bourbon finished in gin and Tabasco cask monstrosity, right? And it came from Randy's distillery, and Randy is my favorite bourbon. And all of a sudden you say, hold on, this came from Randy? He must sell awful stuff now. Right. So now you've ruined 2 brands. So that's a big reason why you'll do non-disclosures. We do have companies, though, that we're forthcoming about who they come from because they don't care. All they do is contract distilling.
Yeah. Interesting. It's a whole different world. I just don't know anything about it. It's so interesting. What about here? You guys just celebrated your 5-year, right? 5-year? No, I'm wrong.
No,
it's 5-year. You had your 5-year, but I haven't celebrated it yet.
Yeah, we had the 5-year. We're celebrating it in a few weeks. It's been quite the roller coaster the last 2 weeks for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, with the snow here, so that's wiped out a half month's worth of revenue in the tasting room. That's been challenging. We've had some issues with our labels that have thrown us a couple curveballs. But yeah, we're reset for February 28th will be our 5-year anniversary celebration, and
Okay.
that'll be a lot of fun. We every one of our small batch releases. My last name is McCraney, Scottish descent from 1700s. But my vision for when we opened is I wanted to have a bagpipe procession, like awakening our bourbon from its slumber. We march out into the streets, signifying we've got another win here, and we release that product to the public. And so they've been a part of every one of it's the Waken District Pipe Band, and they've been a part of every one of our small batch releases. With this one for our 5-year, they're going to help us release a product, but this will be our first product where we actually have a bagpipe-inspired portrait painting. It's a limited release bottle that they're going to be celebrating and releasing their own product for the first time. So that'll be fun. Yeah, we like to celebrate our wins here.
That's good. You got to celebrate the wins.
Yes, yeah, you got to celebrate the wins for sure.
Yeah, that's something I always struggled with, and I've tried to focus on more in recent years. If you can't acknowledge when things go right, then it's always going to seem like everything's going wrong. I feel like that. More about, I need to understand your bourbon more. Like, what's the difference between saying whiskey and bourbon? Like, can you explain that?
Yeah. So all bourbon is whiskey, but not all whiskey is bourbon. So what does that mean? So to be a whiskey, it's a macro classification of what that type of alcohol is. Predominantly meaning, and I'll spare you all the details, but it's got to be made from grain, aged in oak, and I'll bore you with the other stuff. So now here's a general requirement. From there, you've got all these different types of whiskey, bourbon, let's say Scotch, Irish whiskey, and they say, okay, we meet these requirements, but bourbon, well, the grain you must use, majority of it, 51% must be corn. And not only that, the oak you use must be a charred first use oak container. And not only that, we're the spirit of the United States, so it must be distilled, bottled, and aged in the United States. And not only that, it can be distilled at no higher than 160 proof, put into the barrel at no more than 125 proof, and bottled at greater than 80 proof. So it's just restrictions, basically more restrictions on the guidelines for the various types of whiskey, if that answers the question.
Yeah, absolutely.
I get that every weekend.
Yeah.
And I say whiskey interchangeably with bourbon sometimes. Bourbon in the southeastern U.S. is like king, right? We're in bourbon. This is the backyard of bourbon. But if you're not from here, let's say we got a guest coming in from the UK, well, they say whiskey or they might say Scotch. And so I use them interchangeably just depending on who the audience is.
Okay. Interesting. So why do people want to buy from like a small distillery or blender opposed to, there's so many big companies out there stocking the shelves? What's different?
So I'd say what makes us different is we do everything by hand here. We blend, we bottle, we label by hand. We don't mass produce. Now our small batch is a marketing term, by the way. Small batch bourbon is a commonly known thing with bourbon consumers, but it's a marketing term. It doesn't mean anything. Our small batch, we hand select right now 6 barrels to make that. In contrast, a big brand might use thousands of barrels. Right? So they're just dumping a bunch in together. They know if they pull these barrels from this particular area, if they throw them together, they should get the same flavor profile. And then they just want to replicate that same flavor profile over and over again. Olde Raleigh, I don't want to do that. That's what everybody's doing. We don't replicate any batch that we make. So I want to show you, as in showcasing the art of blending, how I can make that same portfolio of bourbon pop differently from batch to batch. And that all just depends on, all these barrels on the back have a little bit different character. So I may find one that just is really spunky and has this great finish that talks back to you for like 30 seconds. And I really love this. let me incorporate other barrels of bourbon to highlight this right here. And so that's our approach to it. And so beyond bourbon, we do a rye whiskey. We do some unique cask finishes as well, which we might only release once a year. So and I would say that there's nothing wrong with the big brands either.
Yeah.
But I've got no interest in being this mass-produced factory brand. And the majority of the brands you see out there, it's factory bourbon. Again, nothing wrong with that.
Right.
But again, I view what my role here is more like an artist, and our batches are paintings, liquid paintings, I guess. And that's what we want to showcase here.
And what are you trying to sell with that? Is it like more of an experience, or how would you explain what you're selling?
If you're here, it's an experience.
Okay.
Yeah, our staff, our tours, the person making it. We want to give you as many touch points into our respective lenses on how we build this brand and what resonates with them. So like when we give a tour, I generally start the tour and I give you the background and the struggle a little bit and what my passion is. And then now I hand it over to my production team. And when they started giving tours 2 years ago, they were very hesitant because, well, this is Brandon's story. And over time I said, no, you need to start incorporating your own story. You're back here labeling, bottling, blending. You're doing this hands-on. People in the industry aren't doing it like you. They do machinery. It's like, so you need to tell your story. And so now we hand it off to them, and they go back there and they maybe pop some barrels with some customers and give them some insight into their world. And then they'll come back and finish up, and I'll walk them through a flight, and I'll go through some of my tasting notes, etc. But once we're done with that, I hand them over to the tasting room team, which we've got a full cocktail menu here, and they make some great drinks. And that gives them their opportunity to talk about their experience with the brand, and gives them a chance to connect with the customer and give them that lasting impression before they leave. So that would be, I guess, the experience aspect of it when you get at the distillery. From outside of here, we do festivals and things like that. And I've been at all of them so far, but I've been at all of them because it's a chance to meet 1,000 people. I can't help myself but talk about whiskey sometimes. I'll go down any rabbit hole you can think of.
Yeah.
And it gives me a chance to spread the word of the brand, but also at a lot of these festivals, there's very few owner-operators there. You have brand representatives, or you'll have actually hourly labor is more common, which their job is just to pour whiskey. They don't know the first thing about it. And so I view that's a lost opportunity for us. Let me nerd out for a few hours, with some people and spread the gospel of Olde Raleigh, and hopefully that results in more folks coming to the store, to the distillery here, or they go to the local ABC store and they're buying bottles, and then I can spread that with the local liquor stores or ABC stores that, hey man, I was here, I spent all weekend pushing this product, I was directing 1,000 people to your stores. So that gains some goodwill with them. They say, okay, he's not just expecting me to sell the product, he's putting in the work too. So they have compounding effects.
Okay. What do you want people to feel whenever they taste your whiskey, or like, what's your goal? What's that experience that you're trying to sell through the flavor, I guess?
Well, first, regardless of what batch we create, I hope that what resonates, it's a quality product, right? Some products you're going to like a little bit more than others because the flavor profile is going to be a little bit different. But I hope the takeaway is that this is a brand that's trying to push the envelope with doing some things creatively. We've got no interest in being like everyone else. We've been very mindful about who we are and who we're not. We'll continue to add to our batches. Like right now we have 11 different sources. Hopefully next year you come back and I'm like, hey man, we're up to 15.
Right.
And in addition to that, I've imported some different casks from around the world, and I've got 4 different casks coming in within the month of stuff to give us an opportunity to create even more unique expressions. So I hope that's it, and I hope when they're enjoying a glass, they're they're doing it with some friends and, creating good memories. That's what whiskey's all about. It's not about plowing down a bottle. Hopefully you're having a good moment with your friends here, building new relationships. And, it's the atmosphere also that guides the whiskey.
You said small batch. That's kind of a marketing thing. Like, what are the sizes of your batches that you're doing? Like, how many bottles typically?
So our next batch we're about to release, it's only 1,600 bottles.
Okay.
Yeah, we the largest we've done is 3,000, and as we're scaling, so now we just got into Virginia, or last year, we got into Florida. We're potentially looking to export to Europe. Part of that is managing the flow of how quickly the stuff is going to go out of the production space, and we do just-in-time bottling here. So we scaled it down to 16 to kind of keep things flowing. That may go up just depending on how sales continue to grow, and we'll adapt accordingly with our team back there.
How has distribution been? Like, do you try and get into you mentioned a couple states, are you trying to get into like the ABC stores or specialty shops, or like how's that been?
Yeah, so if you're getting into this industry, you need to understand every state is different. So unlike many other industries, hey, we're an HVAC company, we're gonna be in 3 states next year. It's not gonna work that way with alcohol, because every state has not every state, many states, North Carolina included, has very close parameter windows of which you can get into or even present to see if they want you to be in the state. And so you have to go through that process. Virginia had that process as well. Presentation was in January, and basically you have hundreds of brands clamoring to get some shelf space, of which there's only X number of spots available. So from that, the state will say, all right, we'll go with Olde Raleigh and these 3 other brands, and that'll be it. So it's understanding those windows, and that'll also often drive your growth strategy. Like Florida, though, wasn't the case. Completely different.
Yeah.
I mean, you can go down there, and if you like a bottle of liquor, like Olde Raleigh, they can sell you a bottle, put it in a bag on your way out the door. Can't do that in North Carolina.
No.
Completely different. So it's been interesting as we've expanded, learning about that process. We sell online, so if you go on our website, you can order a bottle. But if you know anything about North Carolina, you're not able to ship bottles to consumers in North Carolina. So how the liquor industry gets around that is we send our product that you buy online up to DC. DC laws say we can ship to just about any state. So that's how we now have online sales, is diverting all our product up to DC.
I hope you're enjoying the podcast so far. We appreciate everybody for watching. We appreciate the growth that we're seeing. We're getting amazing guests. We still need to get a little bit more reach to keep this momentum going. So help us out. Drop a comment, like, follow, subscribe, share if you love the content. Help us continuing to get amazing guests with amazing stories and help those stories get around the world like they should be. Thank you, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the episode.
So what I was going to say was like the beer industry. That's something I know better. It's like you had your main manufacturers of beer, and it was the big companies, and then all of a sudden all these small breweries started popping up, and then it created this bubble where there's tons of them everywhere, and now you're seeing it go back down where a bunch of them are closing down, and the ones that really put the time and effort into long-term planning are sticking around, and everybody else is kind of fading away. Has there been anything like that with the bourbon industry?
Well, for sure.
Where are we at?
Especially over the last year. You've, again, you had people they wanted to jump into this because of COVID, right? So a lot of folks jumped in, and now you've got very populated shelves.
Okay.
And so if you haven't been mindful as a brand on what makes you different, I think those folks are going to struggle.
Yeah.
For sure. And we've been very mindful about who we are and who we're not. So we make bourbon primarily. I say whiskey because we make rye whiskey, and we've got blended whiskey and light whiskey. But that's who we are. I'm a one-trick pony. I make whiskey. We don't do gin. We don't do vodka. We don't do any of that other stuff. That's who we are. So we're focused.
Okay. And what's the plans for the future? Because if you look online, it says that you might get into gin and vodka and other things. Is that something that you're thinking about, or are you?
Yeah.
Like, how are you going to develop and grow the brand?
So I think those might have been legacy articles from maybe 2020 or something like that.
Right.
Yeah. So this one of the stills back here did have the ability. Both of them, you can make vodka with this one. The one over there, you can make gin. That was never my passion. A lot of times folks will get into that because you can distill it and sell it immediately. And so that when our process piping, the funding for that went away, that kind of eviscerated that idea. Yeah, so I have no plans of doing that.
Okay. What about as far as like, what's your goals, I guess, for the future? Growing distribution, opening more locations? What are you thinking?
Distribution. So the value of a whiskey brand is case volume sales. So getting into other states, definitely on expansion there. We're looking to stock up on our barrels that we have in inventory. And so because the way we position our brand, we can exponentially grow here without having to find another building, because I can purchase barrels from other folks, and then they will, I can pay to have it continue to age at those warehouses.
Okay.
Kind of like, parking a car in a garage.
Sure.
You pay like a monthly fee. That's what you can do. So we would like to stock up on barrels to set us up for years to come. And so I'd say but growth, we're definitely in growth mode. New states.
Yeah. As you get into more states, are you planning to make bigger batches or just more small batches?
We'll need to make bigger batches to keep up with the volume. So generally, you're going to ship at least one pallet of a SKU or a type of bourbon, let's just say, and that's 360 bottles. So
okay,
you get into 5 states, you're going to have to look to increase that batch count. Sure.
Do you have like a goal that you're trying to get to, where you want to be doing a certain number of bottles per batch, or are you limited here at all by how many you can mix at a time?
Well, right now we've gone up to 3,000. We could go higher than that, and we consider it. If we did, we'd have to buy new mixing tanks and stuff like that in the back, because you deal with that size tank is pretty heavy.
Right.
So we tend to move things around with the forklift. So that'll have some constraints. So we'll have to look at some capital reinvestments and things like that. But I call that good problems. I'll take good problems, right?
Especially when they come from growth.
Yes.
What do you like most about being in this industry?
What I like most is I just like to create things. I love having an idea and we've got up to 25-year-old whiskey in the back there. We got some of the oldest stock in North America. And I like how we've created this brand where if I want to wake up one day and just create something unique, I've got the ability to do that. And I'm not constrained by boards and investors telling me I can't do things. I like that aspect of it. I love the customers that come in here and being able to spend an afternoon with them and share our story and hear about their stories. I love that aspect of it. Most of the people in the industry are fun, a lot of fun. If we'll do these festivals or like our ABC convention that's coming up in North Carolina, you'll spend the day doing the dance and giving people products and stuff. But afterwards, generally, the people in the industry, the distillers, the blenders, we'll get together. We've got our bottle, and we're like, hey, man, try this stuff. What do you think about this? And just being able to bounce things off each other and kind of mess around a little bit, that's been a lot of fun. I love this industry. It's great. It's death by taxes, and it's got a lot of challenges. But, I love what I do. I feel very blessed.
What's it going to take? Like, what's it take for you to get from where you're at now to say 10 states, being in 10 states? Like, is it just time, or what hurdles do you have to get over?
Well, candidly, it's cash flow.
Okay.
This is a capital intensive industry. So let's just say if you were to you were to start a brand, I've alluded to this earlier, but generally, a brand's going to start out with millions and millions of dollars. They'll buy years worth of stock of bourbon, and they'll just start a pipeline and sell. All right, here's how many we bought for this year. Here's money for this next year. Because we clawed our way to opening, I haven't been in a position to do that, and I'd like to get into that position at some point. And when we do that, then things will really take off for us.
Okay. What all do you guys do here? You mentioned some events and tours. Mm-hmm. What kind of events? And is it like a place people can rent out for their events, or is it your events?
Yeah, thanks for plugging that in. Yeah, we've got an event space here. It's called the Society Room. It is big enough for 200 people, and we host philanthropy events, wedding galas, wedding receptions, galas, veterans events, corporate events. We do corporate retreats too, and yeah, it's like its own separate business line for us. But yeah, we do host pretty big events here.
Okay, you decided to set up in this small town, and you've watched it grow and build over the last 5 years. Like, how important is it to you as a business owner in the community to be involved in your community?
I was essential. Yeah, that I was very, very mindful when we came here that it's not just a business, it's that a business can have a greater impact in the community. And also keep in mind, we're in rural North Carolina, the Bible Belt, right?
Yep.
So I was the only game in town, and when we were opening, I remember the Facebook groups, there's a local town community page, and they heard this distillery's coming downtown. He's going to ruin downtown and just turn it into a drunk fest. And that's not who we are. We set up the place, and if you come here, you'll see, we're not a sports bar. You're not going to find $2 Bud Lights here. It's a place to come and have a conversation, have an experience. And I wanted the community to know we're here to help this downtown flourish. But also when we did that, I got involved with the Chamber of Commerce. I became the chairman of the board of the Chamber of Commerce to help other businesses in the business community. And we give back a lot. We've given back tens of thousands of dollars to the local Boys and Girls Club, to countless philanthropy organizations. We give as much as we can when we can. But yeah, it's more than just growing a business. It's supporting the community, and hopefully they'll be supporting us back. But I don't need it to be a two-way street. But it's really important for me to give back.
What other products do you sell here? Is it only what you're bottling, or do you sell beer, other?
Oh, now in the tasting room, it's essentially a full functioning bar here. Okay. So we have beers on tap, local craft beers, and actually we'll do collaborations with them. We just did one with Tarbanks Brewing. They took their beer and aged it in some of our empty bourbon barrels. And so they sold a product, which they benefited from, and then we've got a keg of that here that we're selling. We do wine, also cocktails. We're probably, outside of our bourbon, best known for our cocktails. Our tasting room manager, Christy, does a killer job with the cocktail menu. And I would put our cocktails up against any in the region. And yes, that's a biased statement, but I'll stand by it. Come out and try it.
Okay. Is there anything that's happened along the way, like any parts in the journey where it's something that was unexpected that like really elevated you guys and helped you get more recognition?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, we've had a couple. Our most acclaimed product is called Old Stogie. It's a bourbon designed to pair with or complement a cigar. And so to create that product, I imported casks of Armagnac from France and casks of Tawny Port from Portugal. And so I took a blend of straight bourbon, I rested it in those casks for over a year. And we tend to cask age a lot longer than other brands would. But I harvest things based off flavor profile and not how long they're in the barrel. And so when we released that product for the first time, it sold out pretty quick. But I took a bottle of that and I sent it to an international whiskey competition. Not for the sake of getting awards. I didn't know there were really many awards to be won. I sent it up there for the sole purpose of getting a report card on how I'm doing as a blender.
Okay.
Because most blenders are over in Scotland. And so, to my surprise, we got a really good report card back, but that's when we were called the best micro distiller in the United States, and that product swept every category that it was entered in. The impact of that, though, one, it was comical. We didn't know it was a thing. Two, we couldn't take advantage of all the marketing exposure because we have publications asking, send me a bottle, we'll showcase you in this magazine. Would have been sold out at that point for a couple of months. And but that really put us on the map. We had other countries saying, hey, we'd like to import your product. The other humorous part about that was, at the time, Olde Raleigh, the brand, we weren't even in Asheville in this state yet. Like, we haven't covered the state. We surely couldn't get into Germany. And so that's been kind of humorous. Our honey cask, our honey barrel finished bourbon, which was our first unique cask finished whiskey that we ever did. The only reason I did it is I got interested in beekeeping. I thought it was cool. I met these beekeepers at a farmer's market, the Baxters, and they gave me 8 different varieties of honey. They tasted different. And I don't know about you, but I grew up, honey was like that $1.50 plastic Barrett Food Lion, which is liquid sugar, right? And I went, look, I've got an idea. What if we did, I know bourbon and honey pair well together. What if you were to bring in some honey directly from the hive, still gritty and everything, and you'll put it in the barrel. Honey is a humectant. That means it pulls moisture out of things. So you'll pull all the residual bourbon out of the barrel. You can harvest that. It's a bourbon barrel-aged honey. I think it'll be good. And then when you're done with that, I'll put bourbon back into that barrel, and some of that honey grips the walls of inside the barrel, and it'll start to impart a flavor profile in the whiskey. So we released that, and it was a 300 bottle release, I think. And I went, cool, learned about beekeeping. And that product sold out. But unbeknownst to me, if you weren't aware, North Carolina has one of the biggest, if not the biggest, beekeeping community in the country. And so they all know each other. It's a tight network. And they said, hey, the Baxters are working with this bourbon guy out in Zebulon. He's making this unique product. Let's go check it out. And unbeknownst to me, they're coming to the bar, and I'm telling them about our cask finishing process, why it's different than everybody else. And it turns out they were going back to their local ABC store and requesting this product. And I'm like, Blowing Rock, like way out in west. I'm like, who? I'm the sales guy too. And I'm like, why is Blowing Rock requesting this product? Because I'm not going out there. We received 175 orders for a product I never was going to make again. And so we made a second batch, just like, here you go, 175, I got that done. Fast forward a year later, the state asked for it to be a statewide established product because the sales are great on it. And now we're about to release our 10th batch of that product. But had you told me in 2019 that was going to be a thing, man, get out of here. It's crazy, how the consumer has driven our brand by just telling it, this works, man. Roll with this a little bit longer.
Yeah,
we've got a couple of stories like that.
I think that's great. I think that's a good lesson that people need to know is like, listen to your consumer base. Let them kind of guide your product. Don't be stubborn and do what you want all the time.
And they'll tell you what they don't like too.
Yeah. Well, I could sit here and talk to you for another hour or two. It's super interesting. There's a lot more that I'd love to learn. What's one thing that you would say to somebody that doesn't know bourbon to try and entice them to come and drink it?
I would say, don't be intimidated. Like, this is there's an aura about whiskey and bourbon, especially with like the male. It's like this male dominant machismo thing. And I'm like, get out of here with that nonsense. If you're just getting into whiskey, and let's say you don't drink, or you drink beer and you drink wine. Well, first off, you're jumping up to at least 40 to 45 to 50% alcohol. So when you do that, inside of your mouth is going to be like a fire alarm going off. And that's not fun, right? That's your olfactory system telling your brain, that's going to kill you. You don't need to drink that, right? So I'd say if you're first getting into whiskey, by all means, add water, add ice, enough to tame that flame, to pull the mic away from it so that you can maybe try to enjoy something about it. I'd start there. Over time, you're going to build up a tolerance. And then once you build up a tolerance, maybe your palate will start to develop a little bit on, oh, this is sweet. Why is it sweet? Well, these are notes of caramel and vanilla. Like, oh, okay, I didn't pick up on that before. And your journey will start to take off there. But I would say just slide in gently. You need to add ice and water. There's no right way to drink a whiskey or a bourbon. I don't care what anybody says. The right way to drink a whiskey is exactly how you enjoy it. If anybody tells you any differently, take the bottle out of their hand and tell them to quit being a you-know-what and pour your own drink. Yeah, that's what I would say. Yeah.
All right. I know you got to open this place up here in a few minutes. Is there anything that we didn't cover before we get into our closing that you want to talk about?
No, I just appreciate the time, enjoyed the conversation. Always love talking to a fellow business owner, and yeah, come and see us sometime. Yeah.
Absolutely. All right, a couple rapid fire questions, and then we'll tell people where to find you. Favorite whiskey style?
Whiskey type would be bourbon.
Bourbon.
Yeah.
You an early mornings or a late night guy?
Early morning.
Best advice ever received?
Best advice ever received. That's a good one. And I'll give you one quote. It's not the best, but I was just thinking about it over the last week. I think I shared this with a member of our team. Don't ever confuse activity for accomplishment. Right? You can get yourself on this, hamster wheel of feeling like because you're busy, you're accomplishing something. And just because you're busy doesn't mean you're doing the stuff you need to move the needle. So I'd say always focus. That's resonated with me. I had a boss in the corporate world. That all day long I tell people that.
That's a good one. One misunderstood thing about distilling.
About distilling? The big one we get here would be to be a bourbon, it's got to be distilled in Kentucky. And that's not the case. Bourbon can be distilled anywhere in the United States, and you're starting to see more and more of that all over the country. Now, they earned that title because back during Prohibition, they had the foresight, the distillers, to get medicinal permits to operate distillery equipment so that you could actually go during Prohibition, go see a pharmacist, and for medicinal purposes, you could get a pint every 2 weeks.
Okay.
but during that time, they were allowed to continue operation, whereas everybody else pretty much shut down. So they had the leg up on the United States in 1933, and they repealed Prohibition, and that's how they gained that reputation. But now, yeah, we're making it everywhere, and they're making some great stuff all over the U.S. right now.
That's cool. What's one thing that you would tell somebody that's looking to get into this industry and do what you're doing?
Be focused on what you want to be and be mindful about that. Get versed on the regulations and the red tape and on distribution. And whatever you think it's going to cost, double or triple that.
And tell everybody how they can find you, follow you, get your newsletter.
Yeah, so you go on olderaleighdistillery.com, you can check out our newsletter, Instagram, Facebook, Olde Raleigh Distillery. I'm on Instagram as well, Brandon McCraney, Facebook, and Insta. Pretty active on Insta.
Awesome. We end every episode the same way because once I figured out my definition, it changed how I run my businesses and my life. How do you define success?
Success is progress. Success is learning. Success is watching that employee that you brought aboard that had no skill set take something on and run a program. Success is watching your kids grow and develop. I had my son, he just got his black belt in karate. It was a 6-hour exam. And 2 years ago, he was crying every practice, but success was him being persistent and learning and have the patience. I see a success in pretty much everything, even failures. It's not a failure. It's a learning moment.
Can't have success without failures.
Yeah.
Can't think of a better way to end it. I appreciate your time. Thank you so much for sitting down with us today.
Thanks, my friend. Cheers.